Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Brought to you by Junk Be Gone and the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Sports Source. Happy to have you here at the Paper Be Gone studios. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff today, starting with Tennessee's big victory yesterday over #3 Auburn. I complained last week that they kept losing on Saturdays, so we have to talk about the loss instead of the big wins that come midweek. We got a big win yesterday, so we're going to talk about the Tennessee-Auburn game, talk about the importance of that for Rick Barnes, knocking off Bruce Pearl. We'll also talk about some moves on the UT football staff. We'll talk about an idea that was kicked out this week of an all-SEC playoff. We got a lot to cover today. Let's get right into it. First segment of today's show is brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. I have recently gotten hooked or rehooked watching a syndicated comedy show on a nightly basis, Monday through Friday. And every night there are ads for the same law firm. They just never mention to you that they're located out of state. You got to read the fine print. You got to go to the website to realize, oh, you just have a little satellite office in Knoxville. You're really located way out of state. Look, folks, if you need an attorney in East Tennessee, kind of makes sense to get an East Tennessee attorney, and you're not going to find a better one than Marcos Garza and his team at the Garza Law Firm. You can read all about him at garzalaw.com. But since he's been such a big part of this community for so many years, you probably don't need to read that much more about him. You know the name, trust the name. Garza Law, garzalaw.com. All right, let's welcome in the guys that I trust. There's a couple more guys waiting in the wings who I don't trust, so they'll be in later. But the guys I trust are right here. We got former Vol basketball player Isaiah Victor, who's top 10 on so many lists over there I can't even run through them. Right there we have former D1 basketball player, former assistant basketball coach under Bruce Pearl and Conzo Martin at Tennessee, Mark Pankratz. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Josh Ward from 99.1 The Sports Animal. You can hear him Monday through Friday, and that is, noon to 3?
Yep.
I should know that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I do know that. I'm just, extemporaneous thought or talking is not my best thing.
My basketball accolades not quite as good as what's
Yeah, that's true. But, for a host on television, you would think somebody would be good at extemporaneous talking. Next to you from 99.1 The Sports Animal, we have Vince Ferrari. You can hear doing Tennessee baseball. Baseball season's underway. Had a couple of close ones this week against Iona. Won the last two games by a combined score of 56-1. All right, very good. Vols came screaming back from a 39-28 deficit yesterday. Outscored #3 Auburn the rest of the way, 39-23. Kept their home record unblemished on the year. They also strengthened their NCAA resume, which we'll show you a little bit later. Guys, that was a big 67-62 victory. Your reaction to the fight Tennessee showed after yet another long, icy drought, and you're sitting there thinking, here we go again. But Isaiah, well, I'll start with you, the guy who 8 games ago I said, what's this team going to finish in the last 10? And for the most part, it was 6-4. I would have gone 5-5. You said 7-3, 8-2. Well, they're 7-1 at this point, so pretty good. Isaiah Victor, your thoughts on the win yesterday?
Humongous win, 6 straight for Pearl, so we kind of got that off our back. Big salute to Huntley Hatfield, man. You talk about 39-28. I believe that's the part where he hit the three-pointer and cut it to 8. And it seems like everything went our way after that pretty much. That's when we went on our run to close the game out. And Thompson Bowling Arena, you guys were electrifying. And it's no wonder we're undefeated there. And probably, I believe we got the toughest place to play in the whole nation after last night. I really believe it.
I think Arizona would probably agree with you. I think Auburn would probably agree with you. And when you look at their home and road record, which will show you a little bit later, it backs it up. That it's a shame they can't take Thompson Bowling with them into the NCAA tournament because the fans deserve a lot of credit. Mark.
Yeah, the bigs, Brandon Huntley Hatfield, he stepped up. But I mean, Zakai Ziegler changed the game, and it's the his legacy is growing every day it seems. And so I don't want to get too ahead of the skis here, but he changed the game. His ball pressure changed the tempo of the game. The way that they were handling ball screens, it was because Ziegler could get up there and really bother them. BP talked about, Coach Pearl talked about their bigs for Auburn were much better than our bigs. But the game was going to be won and lost at the guard position. And our guards stepped up. Kennedy is learning how to play where it's not making the play like he was trying to always do earlier in the year. He's making the right play, and you're seeing more of our guards step up. Josiah Jordan-James doesn't, not a stat sheet that would get you on SportsCenter, but he defends, he rebounds. He was a difference maker in that basketball game, for me, it started with Zakai Ziegler.
Okay, guys, thoughts?
Yeah, and I would say the collective effort of that. Multiple bigs. So you're going to take Jabari Smith, you're going to take Walker Kessler if you're ranking right, but the effort of Huntley Hatfield, the shot too. Urosh with a few big rebounds. He sees the 7-footer out there, and I'm going to give Kessler the advantage going in, but the stat sheet afterwards says the collective effort, the second chance opportunities were there. And defensively, Green really struggled for Auburn. That defensive effort by the guards, it's been there all season, and it was a huge problem for Auburn.
Yeah, it was the defense, and there was times where Auburn couldn't even get off a shot that have shot clock violations. That's how hard they were working, and Tennessee was making them work, denying on the perimeter, and it was a collective. And you saw them pull a string. One guy's overplaying one. You saw the help kind of connect on the other side. The bigs combined 15 points, 29 rebounds. That is the kind of productivity you needed when it looked on paper like a mismatch in the post, but it was all the way across the board with everybody, and I can't agree more on Josiah Jordan-James. Switch on defense. I mean, he just brings so many intangibles, and his voice has grown as a leader this year. When I think earlier in the year we were asking, all right, where's the leadership on this team? Where's the responsibility being taken by players on this team? And I think he and some other guys have taken that role.
Well, the leadership piece, but also we talked a lot about this team's lack of toughness.
Yeah.
Yesterday we were the tougher team.
Yeah.
We showed both defensively, running our stuff offensively. We were the tougher team down the stretch, and that's why we were able to pull out against a really good Auburn team.
Well, you had James and Huntley Hatfield each had 9 boards. Fulkerson with 8. Plavsic with 7. Out-rebounded Auburn 54-30 from the stat sheet I had. And then also bench points, 19-5. There were long stretches where it was kind of Tennessee, a team effort, versus what seemed to be Jabari Smith. I mean, he's a tremendous player. There's no question he's going to be number 1 or number 2 in the draft. But it did feel more like, to me, team effort versus superstar. And I'll put my money on the team effort. I was impressed.
Well, look what they did against superstar for Kentucky and Oscar Tshiebwe. I mean, they had the better of that with Adu and Fulkerson. And they were able to drive Kessler a couple of times like they did with Oscar Tshiebwe. One of the most impressive things to me is that Tennessee shot terribly in the game as a percentage. We've seen that before, but it just felt different in this game because they had an answer, and their defense led them to at least getting a spurt offensively and get some points because
they actually shot the number they have to make to be decent. They shot terribly, but not god-awful.
Right.
When they're god-awful, which they do that a lot,
right.
That's when they're in trouble. It's amazing. Their defense is typically so good that they can win when they shoot terribly.
Right.
It's just don't miss everything you put up, which unbelievably they've done a few times.
But they usually, when they shoot terribly from the outside, they also struggle from the free throw line. And yesterday, the difference, we outscored Auburn by 10 at the free throw line. Yeah. We had 21 points at the free throw line. That was a huge separator.
Only started missing late.
Yeah.
When it was getting tense.
Man. I was getting nervous.
Give them credit. I mean, look, there was a lot of sweat coming out of a lot of all fans when Auburn scored 7 straight there in that final minute.
17 seconds.
That was not a good look for Tennessee. But then to weather that storm,
a big
and
shot
hold
from
on.
Chandler. That's the guy late, ball's in his hands. You need him to make a play, and I think the ball set on that rim for about 10, 15 seconds in fans' minds. But he hit the shot they needed.
And I love the play call. It was just, it wasn't motion offense. It was set a screen for him and let him go to work. And he trusted the young freshman, and he stepped up.
And it looked like Barnes went to that more in the second half as well. It was like, look, here's what we wanted to do. That may not be working today, so we're just going to turn Chandler loose in some ways.
Yeah, like I said, he put the ball in the hands of his best playmaker,
Yeah.
and he delivered for us.
Barnes had an interesting comment after the game yesterday because fans were chanting overrated as the game kind of counted down. Here's what Barnes said afterwards. Wherever I've been, when fans start doing that, I'm like, stop, give us credit. Don't demean what we just did. We just beat an outstanding basketball team. You just had a great quality win against a team that, first of all, is not overrated. Your fans are acting like you beat nobody. Well, we did. We just beat a top 5 team. I've heard that overrated chant my whole life. I've always thought it was kind of silly, but I've never thought of it from a coach's perspective Mark, when I mentioned that earlier, you're like, yes, I've always thought that.
Yeah, there was someone next to me was saying it, and I hated it because it diminishes, like Coach said, it diminishes
What you
your
just
win. You know, I'd rather I was like, yeah, y'all are awesome. We just beat you. I mean, it makes you, it takes away from the win, and especially if you do it with a minute 14 left in the game. And you almost end up
Almost
losing
gonna make
it.
a bunch of-
Yeah, it's a little
It could
early.
have been really ugly.
How many times do you think it's happened where fans are chanting overrated and then they rush the court? Like, talk about hypocritical.
That's right. All right. When we come back, let's talk about how big that win was for Rick Barnes. We know the record against Bruce Pearl. Let's just talk about the size of that victory in terms of the getting the monkey off the back. That's next on the Sports Source. Come on back.